G'day everyone, Simon here from Position++. In this video, we're going to look at how to configure your Bernese Processing Engine to import RINEX version 3 files. Okay, let's start with a few assumptions we're going to make. Firstly, we will assume that you're familiar with the Bernese Processing Engine because that's what we'll be using. So you need a sort of beginner or intermediate level of knowledge of the BPE. We will also assume that you are using an AIUB RINEX copy script that came with your Bernese installation. The name of that script is RINEX_COP. Or that you have a slightly modified version of this script that you've maybe copied and edited for your own purposes. And finally, we are going to assume in the video that you are using an AIUB process control file. So this is the file that tells the BPE which scripts to run and when. So an example is the RINEX to SNX or RINEX to SINEX PCF that's supplied with the Bernese software. Or again, you might have a modified version of this that you developed, say, in a Position++ training course. So the first step is to examine your RINEX copy script to ensure that it supports copying RINEX 3 files from your data pool to your campaign. So to do that, you can go into your BPS user 5.2 script folder for your Bernese installation. You can see here mine's in C Bernese GPS user 5.2 script. And you're looking for the sort of default RINEX copy script that comes with the Bernese installation. That's this file here, RNX_cop. And you should go ahead and open that in a text editor. Now, if you have your own version of this file, that's fine. You might have even just modified the default one. So here's that default script in the text editor. What we would like to do is just to make sure that there's some evidence that it's trying to work with RINEX 3 files in the script itself. And the first evidence we get for that is here, you can see on the 9th of September 2011, AIUB modified the file to support RINEX 3. You can see some more evidence of that down here a bit further. Here we are setting up for the prioritizing the different types of RINEX 3 files. And most importantly for us, we can see here that in addition to the normal RINEX folder PCF variable, there's an additional PCF variable here called RX3DIR. And that's getting put into two variables here. The first one, the standard RINEX2, is going into RINEX_dir here, and the RINEX3 directory is ending up in this RX3DIR here. Now, how do we know that this is being copied from the data pool? Well, if we go down and have a look a little bit further, we can see that the variables here on line 75 and 76, this first one, RNX_dir, which is where the RINEX version 2 files will be coming from, is coming out of our data pool and then the existing variable name. And the RINEX3 directory is coming from the data pool plus the variable it's pulled from the PCF. So our copy script definitely supports RINEX3 copy from the data pool to the campaign folder, but it will only do it if, as you can see in this part of the script here, the RINEX3 variable in the PCF is not blank. So we're going to have to go and check in our process control file, our PCF, to make sure we have a variable named v_rx3dir. So that's our second step. We will go and set up this variable in our PCF and also make sure that the folder or directory that it's referring to is in our data pool. In step 2, we need to add or edit the PCF variable that our script from step 1 is using to identify the RINEX 3 folder. So open up Bernese, the interface, and then go to your BPE menu option here, edit process control file. Now, for the purposes of the video, we're going to use the example, one of the example PCFs, the RINEX to SNX PCF. So I'll open that up. Now, if you should be familiar with editing PCF files, this is the actual scripts. But what we want to do is click through a couple of panels here. So next, next again, and next again, until we get to the fourth panel, which has our list of BPE server variables or PCF variables. What you're looking for in here is a variable called v underscore rx3dir. You can see here that it's already ready and waiting for me, but that it currently has no value. So it's just blank, which means it won't be used by that script we looked at in the previous step. So I need to put the name of a folder I want to use here in my data pool to have Bernese look for my RINEX 3 files. And I'm going to put in here RINEX 3. Now, if you don't have a variable to edit here, that's no problem. Simply, let's pretend we don't have one. So I'll just remove that variable. If you don't have that variable in the list, you can always just add it in. So I'll make a copy of that one, and then I can edit the name of the variable. To match what was in the script, put the variable value in, and maybe change the description a little bit. So now I've added or edited that variable as necessary. I can save my PCF. Now, before we move on, we want to go and check that our data pool actually has that folder there or create it. So let's go and have a look in our data pool in Windows File Explorer. Here's my data pool. You can see I have a RINEX folder. This is where all of the RINEX 2 files are currently being taken from. So they go from here to my campaign folder. And there's another folder here, RINEX 3. Notice that these match the values of the variables. So this is the folder for my RINEX 3 files. And you can see for the example campaign, and we'll check it later in the video, we have a whole set of RINEX 3 files waiting to be processed here. So to complete this step, you need to make sure that in your data pool you have a folder which matches the value of the rx3dir variable that you set in your PCF. The third step involves editing the appropriate input panels for the scripts that need to be modified to support RINEX 3 files. So there's two of these. The primary one is the RINEX smoothing input panels. So this is actually the only script or program in Bernese that will import the RINEX 3 files. So we need to make sure it's doing that. And we're also going to edit the input panels or check them for the RINEX graph program. Because your PCF may contain that and it'll have a setting that might need to be modified. So let's go ahead and do that. From the main Bernese interface, select Edit PCF Program Input Panels. Now, as explained earlier, we are using one of the example PCFs, the RINEX to SNX PCF. So go ahead and open that up, or open up your own equivalent. And we want to look for the RINEX smoothing program and the RINEX graph program in here. So here is our RINEX smoothing program. It's in at script number 202. It's being called by this RINEX SMT_H script. Here's the program and input panel over here, RINEX SMT, RINEX smooth. So we'll select that. And right underneath it is the RINEX graph program. So we'll select both of those to edit the input panels for. Click OK. So first up, we get the input panels for the RINEX smoothing program, and we want the second input panel here. So click on Next or push Control N to go to the next panel. Now there's only one setting you really need to check or change here, and that is the observation type priority here, this setting. Now, in order for RINEX 3 files to be imported, this has to be set to a file in your GPS Gen folder. So click the little button to the right here. And what you're looking for in here is a file called obs.sel, or observation selection. Let's see if we can find that. It comes by default with the latest installs of Bernese. Here we go. There's a couple of them in here, but we're just going to pick the default one provided, obs.sel. So if you'd like a little bit of information on what's in this file, you can, whilst you have the cursor in this field, go up to Help on Context. It'll give you a little bit of information about it. And I'll also put a reference to the correct pages in the manual where you can read about how it is that this file enables the RINEX 3 importing. That's the only setting you need to change. You're now set up to import RINEX 3 files. This is the only program in the current version of Bernese 5.2, that will allow you to import RINEX 3 files. So you must have the RINEX smoothing happening before you do RINEX import. So let's save that. And then we'll be presented with the RINEX graph program input panel, and we can see here that this is going to cause a problem. At the moment, this program is using the original RINEX observation files. Now, if we continue to use these files here, the .170, the basic raw original RINEX observation files, our BPE will crash with an error because some of these files now will be RINEX 3 format, and this program doesn't like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to preempt that error. We're going to take this setting and we're going to cut it out and put it down in here. So in actual fact, we're going to run our RINEX graph or our statistics on the smoothed RINEX files, this second setting here, rather than the raw ones. And that's because the RINEX smoothing program will convert those RINEX 3 files that it processes into something that this program can actually handle. So save that. Okay, we're done. You can now go ahead and test your modified PCF in your BPE to make sure that it's actually importing the RINEX 3 files. Step 4 in the video is our final step. We are going to test the changes that we have made to ensure that the RINEX 3 observation files are being utilized So to do that, we should have a look at our data pool to begin with. Now over in the data pool, we've got our data's coming from two places, the RINEX folder and the RINEX 3 folder. So in this RINEX folder, this is where the RINEX 2 data is coming from. Let's have a look down here. We've got a file from the Zimmerwald Observatory in 2017 from day of year 2013. So we have that in RINEX 2 format. Now we also have some data in RINEX 3 format from the Zimmerwald Observatory on day 213 in 2017 as well. So what we would expect to see is that Bernese would preference the RINEX 3 data, courtesy of our RINEX copy script, and import that file in for processing. So to do that, we're going to use the example campaign, and that's where this data is from, the example data and campaign and PCF supplied with your default Bernese installation. Okay, so let's go and have a look at Bernese in the interface now. So first of all, check that if you want to do this testing, you need to be on the example campaign as the active campaign. You can see that down the bottom of the screen here. And we need to set the correct year and day of year. So we can set that here, 2017 is the year and the day of year is 213. So that's great, click OK. So let's run our BPE, start the BPE. You can double check to make sure it's on the correct year here and the correct day of year and session over here. Go to the next panel. Now the PCF that we were using in the video is the RINEX to SINEX or RNX to SNX PCF. So select that here. That's the PCF that the BPE is going to use. We don't want to start at a particular script, but what we will do is to speed this up for the video, we will skip a bunch of the scripts after the ones we want to look at. So we know that the RINEX Smooth is the program and its associated scripts that import the RINEX 3 data that's down here. Well, perhaps actually we'll let Bernese import the data into its own format just to make sure that it's actually working. So everything after this script here, we will skip. So we'll select all of those, skip all of those. Okay, let's run the BPE now and see what happens. Now this might take a little while, so if you're also testing this, you may need to go and grab a coffee and come back. Okay, so my script has finished running and it's skipped a bunch of those scripts, but everything seems to have gone well. No errors. Let's close that, and now we'll go and have a look in the campaign folder to check to make sure that the RINEX 3 files have been used and imported successfully. So let's navigate to the campaign folder where we will have a look in the example campaign because that's the one we were using. Now if we have a look in the raw folder, this is where the raw RINEX observations files will have been copied to and where the smooth RINEX files from the RNX SMT program, RINEX Smooth program, will have been placed. So we want to have a look at the Zimmerwald Observatory file. Here it is from day 213 in the year 2017. Now notice that this file looks like a RINEX 2 naming convention file. It has all the naming convention of RINEX 2, but we were expecting it to be RINEX 3. However, if we open it up and have a look in a text editor at this file, even though it has the RINEX 2 naming convention, it's actually a RINEX 3 file. And you can see that with the format designator up here, as well as the format of the file down a bit further. So what the RINEX copy script, RNX_cop, did back in step 1 was effectively copy the RINEX 3 file from the data pool and rename it with the RINEX 2 naming convention. And that's allowed the remaining Bernese scripts, including RINEX Smooth, to pick up the files. So this file here, this is the smoothed version of our original RINEX file. When we open that up, what we'll find is a smoothed RINEX file in the RINEX 2 format, which is what we are looking at when it comes off on the screen here. So we have the RINEX 2 format, and this is the smooth file written out by Bernese. Now Bernese has done this so that the next step, when it imports the smooth RINEX file, Bernese won't have any troubles with it. Now to check this, and our final check is to go into the OBS folder of your campaign, which is where the Bernese format observation files are. So let's go into our OBS folder. Here they all are. We're looking for the Zimmerwald observatory files, and here they are at the bottom. So Zimmerwald for day of year 213, there should be 4 files: a code 0 difference header file, a code 0 difference observation file, a phase 0 difference header file, and a phase 0 difference observation file. And you can see from the file sizes that they've got data in them, which means we've successfully imported some RINEX 3 data using the BPE. That's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.